just as I've said, they are alternative providers of basic education. So there is the issue of quality and cost. So when you're talking about quality and cost, as we know, where the cost is low, it's very easy to find that also the quality will be affected. So because like in our school, students only pay 2,000 shillings a term, and most of them cannot afford since they are in slums. So this affects the pupil to teacher ratio. You'll find that in a case like in our school, one single teacher handling like 50 learners in a school, since we cannot manage maybe to pay for teachers, enough teachers in the school. So we also lack basic and key learning and teaching facilities. So you will find like the textbooks, you can only find like 5 in a class of 50. We also lack basic facilities like ICT, and even meals are affected. Like CBC also targets to find the talents of various students, and it's very hard to nurture the talents and even identify the talents when the teacher-student ratio is very high. And maybe lastly, with all these, the quality of the education is affected, since that learner in Abed school cannot manage maybe to access a book, they cannot access maybe school fees. So at the end of the day, once they come out of our school, you'll find that there is a low transition. Some of them fall out of school because there is no funds to support them once they're out.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Just a question.
Okay.
Why would parents bring children to your school and not to public schools? Whereas the public schools are free, and as we can hear from you, there are a lot of issues in your school, issues of resources, teachers not trained, and all that.
Yeah, I will use a case example of like Kibra, where I come from, where I work. In Kibra, we have 134 Abed schools versus 6 schools only, which are public. So all those, and the population of Kibra is about 1 million inhabitants. So the 1 million cannot fit in the 6 schools that are in Kibra. So at the end of the day, you find that they have to find a school that they fit in, because the space at the public school is occupied. And also, the private school that are there, like when you're talking about our sub-county, you're talking about schools such as CITAM and Rose of Sharon, which are a bit expensive for the parents who come from the slums. So in a case where we don't have schools like ours, most of them will not find an alternative to school.
Thank you. So 134 Abed schools versus 6 public schools.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes in terms of accessibility. Gender and money. You are a youth just after Form 4. What motivated you to volunteer where you are volunteering? And did you find any shock when you got to school where you are volunteering?
Oh, okay. In all honesty, I didn't want to stay home. So I needed an outlet. I needed somewhere where I could go. And when I heard of Pacemaker International, I thought to myself, wow, this is a good opportunity. So going to these schools, a shock I found. This may sound very entitled, but as for me, I went to a private primary school. So when I went to Komarok Primary, first seeing the population, in my school, everyone had their own desk, your own books, your own textbook. But entering these classrooms, they are so congested. There is no space. As a teacher, as a teaching assistant, when I'm going into the classrooms, I'm marking books, I can't pass in between the rows because you'll find some desks are broken, and whereas you're supposed to have 3 children, you'll have maybe 5 or 4 sharing a desk. It may be broken. Yeah, that was one of the shocks.
Okay, a shock there. What has been the most rewarding experience for you volunteering at Komarok? Are you helping in any way? There are youth in this country Is there something they can do to support the learning outcomes?
The reward I'm getting working in these schools, I feel very nice. I feel, what's the word? I feel very blessed knowing that I'm impacting a child's growth. When I'm in Komarok Primary, not only am I a teaching assistant, me and my other fellows decided to start a mentorship program whereby we'll call the JSS, the grade 7 and the grade 8, and conduct life skills, talk to them about things that they may be scared to have conversations with their parents. And when it comes from our youth, they actually listen. And as the youth of this country, knowing that you can impact a child's life. And in Komarok, it's as simple as this is what they are lacking. This is what we are going to do. Coming up with solutions and acting on them and seeing the reward on the child's face. Sometimes they may not give you money, but as you're going home and they come, teacher, asante, na joke round off. Something as small as that really motivates me and adds on to me as a human being.
Thank you. And to you, Amesa, what, as a student in the pursuing a degree in the university, what would be your take in the issues of cost and quality of education in this country, especially considering those who come from humble background?
To start off, I went to Daystar under the government sponsorship that was initiated by the previous government. And you know, when people hear you're going to Daystar or Quare or USIU or Strathmore, they think that your parents are rich. And then you get there and situation kwa ground is different. And like in Athi River, where I study in Daystar, they overprice the items out there because they assume that you come from a rich family. And then, you know, that experience in being in the university, you went under the government sponsorship. Then again, right now with the current government, some of us who went under the previous agreement, we are not even sure if the government will finish paying our school fees so that we get our certificates. And I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, there was something on, I think the Standard, or I'm not sure which newspaper, but some graduates have not gotten their certificates from institutions like Daystar and Quare that are private, and they took on students under the government sponsorship. So that is a challenge to start off, because now that the funding may be cut midway, we are not even sure about our futures and even our graduation, come out apata certificate. And then the other thing, I do not use the government sponsorship. I don't use HELB because my parents feel that the subsidy that the government gave is enough and they can actually manage to pay the rest. But for my classmates who are not able to and they use HELB, right now, because they come from private institutions, it's hard for them to get their HELB early. So someone who depends on it probably to register for classes, and then after the registration window has been closed, they cannot register if they've not paid their fee. So it's a challenge because the cost is high. We went there at a subsidized cost, and then now that the subsidized cost is now coming at another cost, you're not even sure about your tomorrow in that institution.
Thank you, Bridget. Brian, could you share some insight on what Pacemaker International, as an organization development partner, is doing to address the challenges of cost of education and also the quality, and what are some of the development organizations do to ensure that they participate, they collaborate with the government to address the challenges?
So I think also it's important to mention, when I cleared high school, I also volunteered in a school. And just like Jada there, it was my first time going to a public school in the condition I didn't know that is how it used to be. I mean, I grew up close to public schools and I would see those students, but I didn't have the interest of seeing until the day now when I signed up to join Pacemaker International as a teaching assistant, and then I joined, and then I went to a school, and I think same reaction, I was also very shocked, and only to hear from the school that that is not the worst case scenario. So what to me was not like an interest in education ever. I didn't want to work with teachers. I just realized that there's so much that is happening that is wrong in the foundational stages of children. So Pacemaker International has been existing for the last 10 years. Initially operated just in Nairobi, but like I mentioned, has expanded to various parts of the country. And ideally, the most primary thing we used to do long time ago was just get teaching assistants, which I did, and we placed them in schools as teaching assistants. Why they have to be teaching assistants is because only teachers are permitted to deliver content to the student. This is despite, data that shows that there's a big shortage of teachers in the country. So we also thought about who can we work with to ensure that this is being delivered, this can be done, and we realized we'll go to those who we felt at the time were looked down upon, who were the young people. So we looked at which type of young people, and we thought guys who've just left high school, they have a gap year before they join university, where most of them just lie around. I mean, sometimes you will do computer, maybe you're doing computer 3 hours a day, the rest of the time you're just dilly-dallying in your estate or wherever it is. So we started recruiting young people from high schools all over the country, just going to talk about what's happening, the problem, presenting the problem and asking people to volunteer. But in this case, it was a bit different because we wanted people to volunteer in their communities, where they come from, not just taking you from Kawangware and taking you all the way to Eastlands to volunteer. We want you to volunteer there in Kawangware so that you can also be a role model in your own community and so that you can address the challenges in your community. So as we have grown over the years, we were able to come up with different programs. And the first program we have is called the Community-Based Teaching Assistant Fellowship, which is what JADA is in right now. The Community Teaching Assistant Fellowship addresses the shortage of teachers and also addresses the literacy challenge in the schools. And in that program, we also have something we call Teaching at the Right Level, where now we take learners through cohorts of just trying to improve their literacy. We do it in a fun way. It's actually a club. We've approached it in the angle of a club. So we do this at clubs time, the free time of the learners, because remember, only teachers are allowed to deliver content to the learner. So we can only make it a club. And because we have seen data to show it works in places like India, where in those countries they do them now in their estates. Given the population there, you can imagine if 10 people from your area, their children are meeting, they're going through these activities of reading, spelling, and writing, it's very beneficial. But in Kenya, it's very possible for it to be done in the schools. We also came up with a program called the 10 program, Teacher Empowerment Network. In this program now, we address the shortage of teachers. We employ teachers on behalf of the school. They come in, these are qualified teachers, we place them in the schools, but as opposed to a normal teacher who is coming to work and going home, we also offer additional training on how teachers can also be change makers in the places that they are placed to work. So you come to school, probably you see there's a problem maybe of shortage of books. How can we train you to write proposals and get people to actually come and give towards this project? And that's something that all our volunteers or teaching assistants, but place we call them fellows, that's something they must do in the schools. We make it clear that as you go to the school, please find a problem in that school, write proposals. We do train them on project management, proposal writing. This Friday, we are having a session on storytelling, just for them to be able to tell the stories of these schools and for them to receive all the assistance that they can get. So this is also the same as to what we do with these teachers who are working in the classroom. So you can imagine now, as opposed to a teacher just coming, finding learners don't have books and complaining, they are also able to go and approach organizations for them to get a solution and a lasting one. We also have the Girl Rising, which is for the girls. We've partnered with Girl Rising International to just mentor the girls in our schools, in the schools that we have partnered with, who come from communities where some of them you'll go and find out, but I'm also a mom at home. Just like in the presentation, Pamela mentioned that you walk around and find young people, children rather, moving around unsupervised. Sometimes you worry, but you really can't take care. The reality is that you can't take care of everybody. So you try to come up with mentorship sessions like this to address some of these challenges and and to build their confidence levels as they grow. We also have the Street Business School program running in our slum areas. This is just to equip parents also with economic skills, financial management. Sometimes the big challenge also in these areas has been the parent doesn't have time really. You know, it's either I sit there and raise you, or I go and look for money, or if I sit there, probably you're going to sleep hungry. It's a very valid reason, honestly. So we also try to give them these skills to improve them in this way. Then the last but not least program is what Bridget here had talked about. She said she's part of the alumni committee. So once our volunteers have done their cohort, the fellowship runs from January to end of July. We leave that time for schools to re-strategize and plan around their work, as we also recruit for the next year. So once they finish their program in August, we also have a graduation for them at December, where we award them for the different achievements. And also, given the fact that we also collect hours, I'll talk about that a bit later, they join the alumni body. So we've had alumni from all the way from 2013 to 2023, and in this alumni body, they have a committee like you had, they have a constitution. We also just want them to continue with the work of change making, so that's why we have in the alumni something called the PACE Project Lab. So if you really have a lot of ideas and ways you think you can solve a problem in our country, in Africa, and globally really, we put you in a mentorship session, in a mentorship training, where you're trained on how you can start your own organizations, address these problems. This runs for 6 months, and then now they're led to now go and begin the organizations in the different places. So that's how PACE is addressing those problems.
Thank you. Jennifer from Total News, you have mentioned that you address the issue and the gap of digital literacy. How would you, in your perspective, rate the issues of cost and quality in Kenya? And what hinders parents from paying for their children for those digital skills?
So the gap is huge, okay? Because in reality, the children who are accessing digital literacy are those ones in urban areas, specifically Nairobi. So unfortunately, and the government is yet to fill in that gap, because when you talk about literacy, digital literacy, you're talking about access to the internet, you're talking about, and for internet to work, you need electricity, and then you need gadgets, okay? It can be a computer, it can be a phone, whatever, and those things are expensive. But that's not a priority for government right now, and I do understand that. So it's very expensive for children to be able to access. And as Mtoto News, what we have, we know it's an essential skill. It's not a life skill, it's an essential skill. It's the same as learning how to read and write. Digital skills is the same. So what we have done as Mtoto News, we have partnered with organizations, and we have trained, children from across the country, from Kisumu, Mombasa, Nakuru, Eldoret. In Nairobi, we have covered almost the whole of Nairobi, Kibera, Mathare, Dandora, Korogosho, all the parts of Nairobi, to be able to give children these essential skills. And right now, as you see, we are pushing for a policy. We have come up with a policy document, and we're saying this is why we think it is important for government to prioritize digital literacy, because it's an essential skill of future of work. Okay, if you're going to have our children working online, or they are going to use these tools like AI, or they're going to work in the virtual reality or in the metaverse, they need to have these skills. So, and it's expensive, and we are yet to get there. So that's whatever, and I'm so glad I've met you, Pam. We can be able to partner in the schools that you work with. So for us, a little way, we are hoping by the end of the year, we are targeting 10,000 schools. Is it 10,000? 1,000. 10,000, amen. 1,000 schools, and in those schools we want to be able to train teachers, because our model is we train teachers because of the spiral effect. You can train a child, but that child will leave the school. But if you train the teacher, that teacher is able to train a minimum of 100 children. So we're going to train teachers, and then we're able to equip those schools with equipment for the children to be able to use. So that's our big dream for the year. We want to be able to, our target is 1,000 schools, so that we can be able to support government. Because someone say, when you say government, I'm government, you're government. Because government, democracy is a government of people, by the people, for the people. And who are the people? We are the people. So we are trying to fill in that gap of lack of digital skills among our children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have been talking for quite long, and we would want to hear some of your views even before we continue. Any reactions from the floor? Any additions? What are you doing in terms of education in this country, and what do you think can be done? The microphone will be brought to you. You can have your hand up, or in case you want to have a follow-up question to the panelists, you can as well ask.
Thank you. Let me just give a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Kennedy. I come from the great city of Kisumu. And I just wanted to make my comment from an informed perspective. I am a board member of a secondary school and also of a primary school, where I'm entrusted to be a signatory to their bank. I've witnessed the issue to do with capitation. For a fact, it is politics in education. That capitation, the government has, in the recent past, adopted a system of late disbursement and recalling of that funds immediately the terms open. So you realize that the school programs, especially for the JSS, you cannot withdraw a JSS school money and use it the way you can do with the lower primary. The process there is so tight. You have to do a budget, you take the plan to the sub-county education officer, you take it to the county. When they approve, you take it to the bank, you call all these people. By the end of the entire program, the schools are closing. So the children are left for themselves. And that was on capitation. On free education, let me just say, for heaven's sake, how free is free education in Kenya? That's a question that most of our parents tend to battle with. And our good teacher from the other side of the country will tell you that when a politician, let me say the president, for this case, President William Ruto says, na mambo ya elimu tumesema ni free, na mwalimu asifukuze mwanafunzi. I know it becomes very tough. A parent will tell you that Rais alisema shule ni free. It's not free, especially when it comes to acceptability of the CBC. The CBC books, I talk as a book buyer. You will buy books until you ask yourself, are we really stocking the school library or are we buying books for the kids? This is what will make the parents resent this education model, because as of today, most of our parents have not really fully incorporated and accepted CBC as a form of education. They see it as an exploitative form of education that only asks them money. In Western, I had a parent asking the kid, hadi hii kuku yangu nataka kupeleka CBC, na hiyo ni ugali ya nyumbani. So it becomes very difficult. Collins will tell you here how it, nasema ukweli. So I would wish that we get to a point as a country where we depoliticize education. When you talk of bursary being an alternative fee payment to vulnerable children, I would still go back to my point, depoliticization of education. Whether I voted for you or not, I'm a constituent by birth. The money has been allocated for disbursement. It is only imperative that I'm accorded that opportunity. But the truth on the ground, today people in Migori were demonstrating that the government of Migori County has not disbursed bursaries since January. Homa Bay County is asking, what is the criteria of awarding bursary? As long as we still attach bursary disbursement to political, as a political appreciation, then we still have a long way to go as a country. So as pacemakers and opinion shapers, community where I belong to, I believe you can do best to ensure that these things remain independent. Mwanafunzi apewe tu karo usaidizi juu yeye ni Mkenya na anaishi mahali fulani. So issues to do with free education, to me, we still have a long way to go. Hiyo kitu si free. It's only free by the word of mouth. But kwa ground, vitu ni tofauti. Parents have to dig deeper into their pockets. And in some instances, I even go to the meeting back in Kisumu. I leave this city at night. You find a parent, a student, it's a pupil, coming and saying, Daddy alisema mimi, amechoka na hii mambo mnataka tu pesa kila siku. And you find out that the teacher only told the kid to go and bring enough books to ensure that they stay in school. CBC has been rolled out. Most of the students are still borrowing lockers or the desk from primary schools to adequately participate in class. You find there's a big gap. So let us just let education educate and not politicize education. We'll move far as a country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. There is a hand there. Is education free in our country? Is it really free? Thank you, sir, for that contribution.
My question goes to Brian.
You can introduce yourself. Thank
sorry.
you.
My name is Luisa. I'm a student from Daystar. My question goes out to Brian. You have mentioned that you guys have different projects that you're running to improve the quality of the education, right? So for the last 10 years that you guys have been running, how many initiatives can you say that have been successful, since you have the teacher assistant project, the alumni, and the teacher empowerment? Is there one that you can say, yes, we have achieved what we wanted to, or you guys are still there?
Thank you for that question. That's a very good question. So obviously, internally as a program, we have our targets that we set. So suppose we are working with 50 schools, let's say in Nairobi. We want in these 50 schools to ensure that all these learners are transitioning successfully to high school, because we work with primary schools only. So our biggest goal in all the work that we do, in all those programs, is for the learner to be able to transition, because we believe by transitioning, in a way, we are trying to break the poverty cycle. So for us, our biggest achievement has been all those learners moving from primary successfully into high school without having them drop out, because there's also that need. I think one of the things we try to look at also is how we can follow them up in high school. That's something that's always in the pipeline. We are now trying to see how we can follow them up until the point we know if they actually even made it to university. But like he said, there's a problem of funding, because some of the families, and even just like our teacher there said, there's a big problem of money and the cost of education. It's not very cheap. Even the 2,000 that you mentioned there, it's not everyone that can afford it. So sometimes we focus on ensuring that this learner can be able to get the best education. That's why the learners are there to assist the teacher in making sure they reach people. In those you can imagine in those 134 schools in Kibra, for example, those ABET schools, versus, you said six public schools. So you can imagine the congestion in that public school, because it's having one of the biggest slums we have in Africa. So our work mainly is just to support that the learner gets the best quality education. That's why we even have that club. They have the English lesson, but we have also now a club to make sure that they move. And it's very easy to measure. I think we work with a lot of data, collecting a lot of results every term. Every now and then we are in the schools just trying to find out these learners, where are they, especially even the ones in that teaching at the right level program, just to know how far have they moved. We record all these things, we measure and see how we can go back, redraw, so that we can make sure that everyone now, no one is left behind. And even when they, and even especially in the literacy program, when they are we find out someone has been left behind, we always open the door for them to come back again and redo, just for them to achieve what we want them to achieve. Yes.
Probably to also add to that, when I did the fellowship, the community-based teaching assistant program really helps because each fellow is challenged to come up with a project. And then you identify a need in that school, something you can try and achieve, and then you work on it. So for me, I saw a need for books in that school. Children had government books, but they did not have supplementary books, which they actually needed. So with the skills that I had learned from PACE on proposal writing, storytelling, you go to companies, you approach them, and it's hard because I remember there's a time I went to a boardroom na wakaniekea maji hapo, and the table was so long, and the people who came in that company, they were all men, and they didn't even come with notebooks because they thought I was kidding. And then I explained to them what I was trying to do, and they were like, "You're very ambitious, you seem very naive. When you get money, come back." So it's very hard, but in the long run, I was able to work on my project, and I got funding, and I was able to purchase the books for the children. So the different fellows, and in this teaching assistant fellowship, they achieve impact in small ways in the different schools they go to, even if you may not see it as a big thing, but it actually works.
I think there is a lot of impact. I can pick some other questions. Later I will be asking Sam to comment on what are some of the impact that he has seen from the development partners in his school. How has he managed to balance with very little, 2,000, a child paying 2,000 for a whole term? How has he managed to bridge that gap to ensure that child is eating, the teacher is paid, their classrooms and other needs are met?
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. My name is Brian Kithinji. I work with the Policy Action Initiative. My question first goes to the entire panel, and it is basically on this. Do you think that it is time for us to devolve primary school education? And the reason why I'm asking is statistics actually show the moment that we devolved ECD to the county governments, they actually increased enrollments in kindergartens by 80%. And now we even see re-energizing of culture, because when people go to ECDs back in their local counties, they learn the culture of their areas. So do you think that we should also go through that route in primary school level? Because we know that even today, if an MP wants to open a school, that is not something that he or she can do easily. It has to go through the board, it has to go through government institutions, and we know that our bureaucracy is always based on political processes. The other question is on the ABEC schools, the one, Sam, you talked about. And my question would be, you've praised so much that, okay, fine, I get there, 134 schools against 6. But again, are they really impactful in solving the problems if they are not involving a community-based approach? And by community, I mean, do you involve community members in the board of governors? Do you involve community members in setting up the fees? Because if we are in a place like Western, instead of us paying fees, for example, we could, let's say we are going to provide foodstuffs for the children instead of us paying fees. So if you involve community members, you can get scenarios like that. My third question is on the quality of education versus the quantity of education. Which one should we focus? Because we know our Article 4 of the Constitution guarantees for us to have the right to education, including even the International Convention of Civil and Political Rights, the ICPPR and the UDHR. But again, we know that education, the moment we make it free for all, is just like healthcare. It will never be quality. Not everybody can go to school. We have to accept it. It's sad. It's a sad reality. But that's the truth. Even in European countries, not everybody goes to school. That is the hard truth. So I think my question is, should we be focusing more on the quality of education, considering that our quality is already down? So even when we recruit the teachers, our focus should be on which teachers can perform much better, can instruct much better, not which teachers can reach out to more students, because this is not a political race where we are going to get the numbers. That's my perspective. You may answer about it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I think we can take a few more so that we respond at once.
Habari zenyu. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Mine is not even about the question, but just adding, and I'll take it back to each and every one of us, and I wish in this panel list to the organization, wangeletea pia bado wa DCS wa education. You know, by the end of the day, there are things hata tukiamua kuongea, and the people who are sitting on that seat, they are not here. Hawasikii nini zetu. But by the end of the day, dialogue lazima ifanye nini? Lazima ifanyike, si ndio? So mimi nataka kusema hivi, with an observation, and somebody amegrow in, nimesomea private na pia bado kwa government school. Did you know that si government, kwa sababu tunasemanga government, tunasahau government ni mimi na wewe, si ndio? But tumeikuja kurealize ya kwamba watu wenye wanaumizanga sana sana hata wazazi si government, ni walimu. Did you know that? Haya, number one, I'll take you through with this. Unapata shule iko na watoto kama 1,000. Wanalipa school fees per term kama tuseme, kama give me that any, tuseme kitu kama 20,000. Si ndio? Per term 20,000. Government already kwa hiyo shule inajua mtoto fulani amelipa 20,000. Na imeenda kwa account. Unarudi unasikia basi ilidonatiwa hapa na ilikuja for like, imekuwa hapo for like 10 years, but kila mtoto anaingia hiyo pesa, walimu ndio wanajuanga venye but it is the, let me use about the teachers, because all of them they are there board, hiyo board yote bado some of them they are teachers, si ndio? You'll collect me, si ndio? So board of them bado they are the teachers. But now you see, this is not yet in government inaumizana. Ni mimi na wewe ndio tunaumizana sisi wenyewe. Na vitu zenye tunaumizana zenye the reality zenye ziko. Kama ni games unapatanga walimu ndio wame-exaggerate. Na hiyo pesa inasikia isiingie kwa account. Ingie wapi? Kwani hizi pesa zenye zinaingia kwa shule zinatumika kiaje? School fees inatumika ya nini? Kwa sababu kama imagine 1,000 multiply by 20. How much is that per term? Hizi pesa zote is millions of money, kwani haziwezi fanya hata development. Kila wakati unasikia imeongezewa. Sasa kama sai bro, hatuwezi vunja ati masomo. What you're supposed to do, because we have it and we have this challenge, what only we need to do, a simple thing. Where is the challenge? What can we do? How can we help even that government yenye tunasema na government mimi na wewe ni nini tunaweza reduce? Ni okay, budget ya head teacher. Kuna siku yenye head teacher ama principal atakuja kusema wazazi tulipata school fees ya bilioni 1. True or false? Ni wapi imeitangazwa kwa shule gani? Lakini utasikia pale kuna CDF wanafanya construction, but unasikia board imekuja imeambia wazazi kila mtu akuja atoe 5,000. Hiyo ni government kwa inaumiza mtu ama ni board na walimu? Let us talk to the reality. Sawa sawa. Let us take back. Sisi wenyewe ndio tunajiumiza kwanza. How can we change? Ile school fees imetumikaje? Do we follow about it? Do we go back kwa education, kwa sababu kwa kila county kuna representative of the government, kuna wale nini? Hiyo school fees yenye imekuja hata mmoja imefanya nini? Do we have accountability? Has pia bado kama wazazi tuache pia bado kublame kama nini? Because we have that right, but we forget ya kwamba wewe kwa sababu unataka uonekane uko sawa, wewe kama unapatanga pesa. By the way, one of the things about education, it is a matter of pocket. Na sitawadanganya. Wewe uko na ngapi? Wewe ukisikia kumeitwa kuna mzazi ana complain, hapana hiyo mumeongezea mimi siwezi. Mwingine anasimama anasema I approve that one. But yeye anajikea yeye alililo mtoto mwenye ana. Do you know that is a problem we have in as a nation? Ya kwamba I don't care, but as long as I have money, na wewe nataona nitapitisha vitu without kuconsider wewe mwenyewe na wewe. Kwa hivyo hata tukiongea by the end of the day, even if we talk about the government, we ourselves, what are we doing? Which step are we taking first of all? to change about the education. What is education? Because by the end of the day watoto wana follow all those things that we have tunafanya kufuata. Asanteni sana.
Thank you very much for the issues being raised. We can have the microphone there. We take from last two and then try to respond, and then if time allows, we can take another set.
Okay, my name is Collins. I just want to make an observation. First of all, the cost of education is proportionally to the cost of living in the country. What I'll always tell everyone is we as Kenyans, sometimes we have a rigid mind. I'm sorry to say so. In 2001, a university student used to pay fees around 8,000 shillings, that is tuition fee, right? If you go to a public institution at the moment, I went to university between 2014 and 2019, we used to pay the same amount as tuition fee. And do you want to tell me the cost of commodities is still the same between 2003 and 2015? No. Okay? So one thing we should accept as a society is the cost of living has increased. Therefore, also the cost of education will increase. The only problem we have, the challenge we have, we can say, is the cartels within the entire system. Like, for example, the other day, TSC, it was so shocking, they say that in our country, we only have 60% of the entire teachers in school are being employed by TSC, meaning 40% of the teachers employed by boards. That means that is fees that is increased and our students are supposed to pay. So at the end of the day, we need the relevant bodies which are entrusted with the education life of a student to take care of their mandate. And that's why I proposed earlier, when we were having the corruption, the ESC session, I proposed the only thing we have to do as a country is to have an independent body that deals with education, so that we don't have this change of education system now and forth. Like in 2002, 2003, I remember when you joined 2000, education was free. But by the time I was joining high school, you realize the education wasn't free as such. But us, when we were in primary, education was totally free. We never used to pay anything. We used to go to school, unapewa kitabu, and that's why village elders wangekupata kijiji unapigwa. You see? But right now, you'll find those kids whom President Kibaki envisioned, like every student should go to school. At the moment, the same students are still at home. Because why? The cost of CBC. You cannot tell me a parent from Oloitoktok will be able to buy all these things that the CBC requires. So at the end of the day, we need to have an independent body that regulates education curriculum in Kenya. That is the only way we're going to solve this education circus that we have. For example, look, Kibaki came up with his own system. Uhuru came up with his own system. When Ruto came into power, he scrapped up everything. So it means when somebody else comes into power in 2032, they'll scrap off everything that has been done by President Ruto. So at the end of the day, the only thing that can solve everything about education is an education independent body. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mine is a short one. My name is Elvis Misati, a student from Daystar University. Mine is to understand the foundation of the app-based schools. Like, who is funding these schools? Is it the government? But you said no, they're supposed to come where the government cannot handle it. So is it NGOs? And in these NGOs who come fund the school, are they doing it out of goodwill, or are they coming with conditionalities? If they are saying that this is how we want this app-based school to be, and this is the kinds of students that would prefer you allow, or would want for you to promote such and such? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and we really appreciate the discussion and the dialogue that is coming along. We might not respond to all the issues because we are airing our views, and all of us really have an opinion, and some of them might not be responded in this sitting. We appreciate the fact that one of us has mentioned maybe the CS should have been here, because really these are education matters, and I think that's something the organizers can consider next time. I would like Sam to respond on the last question on who is funding the schools, the app-based schools, and at this point you might comment on the part the development partners play, and how do manage the whole issue of cost to provide quality education? Combine that with community involvement from one of the participants. How do we involve community in terms of your setting in that school? And then our sister here, Jennifer, will respond to the issue of, do we need to devolve the primary education, and should all the children access education, or should we make it a privilege to the only people who can afford? Like, education is not for all. I think that's one of the issues that has been raised. Should we make education to be something like to benefit a few people who only can afford? And then Brian will mention something on the issue of the parents and teachers, the teachers being the people who are straining the parent most. Are we in a country of man-eat-man society? Who should be held responsible even on some of these issues? We can start with Sam, go to Jennifer, and then Brian.
Thank you so much. I'll start with this one of funding of ABET schools. So these ABET schools spring up because of a need. Maybe a community, they observe several children who are not attending school, and then they come together and agree that now these children will not continue like this, so let's set up a school. So majorly, the ABET school survive on partnerships. So if I want a book, just as she has said, I'll approach somebody who can maybe purchase a book now for me. If I want maybe a teacher, the organization like Pacemaker, like in our school, we have a teacher and assistant teachers from Pacemaker who are now assisting to bridge the gap that was there in the level of maybe personnel in terms of maybe labor. So it's majorly partnerships. So for the needs, like when you're talking about sanitary pads, we even sometimes approach even university students in their various group, and they come to support us. And then, so these are community schools generally, because the ones setting up the school, so the school comes up out of the need because it's not there in the community. So in levels, there is a board. It's a mandatory requirement by the government that a school cannot run without a board. So the board members will majorly come from the community. I hope I've answered. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We can have Jennifer respond.
Thank you so much, Pam. Your question. UNCRC, the United Nations Conventions on the Right of the Child, the African Charter on the Rights of the Child, defines a child 18 and below, right? And it's a right for every child to have education. Your parents' economical status should not define or give you a how do I want to tell? Yani usipate, because of what your parents get should not determine if you're going to enjoy a right. Okay? So for me, I am, let all of them go to school. Let's have 500 children in that classroom. At least they know how to read and write. You never know what's going to happen. Okay? So for me, that is quality. We're going to work on quality, but let every children have the same, the same right and the same chance. Okay? Let's give all children. Okay? Quality, we can talk about quality. I love your point about devolution. I'm a pro-devolution person because I have seen over and over the fruits of devolution. And I believe if we devolve education, especially basic education, we're going to see the fruits. Okay, I've seen the fruits like in ECD. I've gone to schools, ECD centers established by county governments, and they are amazing. They are fully equipped. They have trained teachers, which was not happening before when they were the national government. Okay? So for me, I think children's services that's education, child protection, all those services should be devolved because we are going where the children are. Okay, because national government is way up here. They don't think about a child in North Turkana. Okay, they don't think about that. So for me, I believe I do support the devolution of basic education because it's going to really have an impact on children. Okay, so for me, I'm supporting that. But children, give everybody a chance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you, Pamela. When it comes to the conversation of parents and schools, I like speaking from a point of there is a lot of negligence that is there in this country when it comes to parents relating to teachers in schools. Meaning, me as Brian, I have my son in a certain public school. I'll use public school because that's what I have much knowledge on. I will leave my child in school in the morning. I'll probably meet my child asleep at night. And maybe they were given a note on what they need to contribute, like they mentioned about contribution. So my work is just to read, and probably if I am very interested, I will want to go to school and know, hii 500 umeitisha ya exam, because that's the one I know is very common being asked for. Exam 500, exam 300. Hii kwani exam inatolewa wapi? But in most times, we have enabled this habit because we don't ask questions. Schools have academic days, schools have parents' meetings. We have attended some of those meetings just to see how parents are being involved in learning. Most times you go, you find there is nothing up until your child is kicked out of school because of school fees. At that point, because now the responsibility is on your end for some reason, now you are very concerned, you want to go, and you're not even going to find out how they're performing. You're just going to find out, why is my child at home, please, and as a kappa, more. I think parents need to be more involved in their children's learning. This will keep the schools on their toes. If you go to some of these schools that we call best performing, these are things that are part of their culture. The parent can pop up and just ask, how is my child performing? But when it comes to these low-income areas that we mostly operate in, you find that kids are on autopilot, the schools are on autopilot. There is also a lot of, what we try to do at PACE also is train parents on how they can support learning at home, something that also is not working very well. So I think if parents were more involved and more conscious about what's going on with their learners and their children especially, I think some of those issues would be evaded. Because it's true, there could be some cases where this money, it's not even accounted for. Like he mentioned, I try to think about a time when our school fees was declared, how much was collected. I don't think that has happened ever in my life. So, and I don't think it will happen up until people form a habit. If there are positions to be filled in school, like the Parent-Teacher Association, go and take them up and take them seriously with a vision and just implement some of the things. Because part of what the board is supposed to do is, it's actually a mandate under them to have a school improvement project, a school improvement plan. So at some point they will come and reach out to you about that money. And it's okay to actually give towards developing a school. However, it needs more keenness on just knowing if that money is being used in the way that it's supposed to be happening. And it's you to do that. I don't think it's fair sometimes we actually just give them the leeway to do what they want to do. Yeah.
Thank you very much, panelists. As you say your parting shot, I would like to hear some of the recommendations from Bridget on some of the issues you raised on issues of university education and the opportunities youth have to contribute in bridging the gap on quality of education in this country, and as well as money. You should also mention something on opportunities available for youths and how that would go a long way in improving the quality of education. Let's have the parting shot, beginning with Bridget, Mani, Sam, Jennifer, and then Brian.
Okay. Opportunities for youth, volunteering. But then when you call young people to volunteer, looking at the economic times, it's hard. Because if someone is thinking about, I'll go volunteer what will I use for fare, lunch, and such things, it becomes very hard because opportunities present themselves, but then the issue of, having that money to support you or your upkeep, even in the process of accessing that opportunity, becomes hard. However, I am very appreciative of the opportunities that PACE creates through the alumni body together with the teaching assistant opportunity. It helped me, PACE opened my eyes because I knew public, when anything is related to the government and people would be like, but then when I went there, I actually saw the situation and that opened my eyes. And then issues to do with, you said money and then recommendations. I think one recommendation that was given of having an independent body in the education sector would really work, because with each regime comes, new things, from Kibaki to now Uhuru and then Ruto. After every 5 or 10 years, we are not even sure what next. So if we have that independence of the education sector, and our government system is actually good because the PS normally don't keep on changing the way the cabinet secretaries do. So if that could be managed for, I guess, every ministry, but in this case now for the education sector, it would really help. And then he raised an important matter on quality versus quantity. The government has done a lot of work in ensuring there is quantity in terms of having schools. They are saying we have graduated a certain number of teachers, and they have TSC numbers, they have the permit to work in different schools. But quality issues come down to now the pupil-teacher ratio, teacher-pupil ratio, sorry. So if we have, like the school I volunteered at, there was one class that had 80 children, others having 76 in one class. So if we have one teacher with 76 children, see, that's a lot of work. And as Sam said at the beginning, it would be hard to identify talents if you have one teacher manning 76, 80, even 100 learners. So if we could focus more on quality, and some teachers, by the way, when I volunteered, you get that a teacher has gone through several chains of education. Alisoma 7423, then amefunza 844, different types of 844, ile ya Moi, sasa amefunza Kibaki, and then now in CBC. Now this teacher is so old, even when you add the CBC training, amekuwa confused. So going down to individual teachers and how long they've been in school, how can these trainings be tailored to, cater for generations of teachers? And even now to the university, and even before the panel, I remember we were saying we have in the universities people who are even 70 years lecturing, 60 something. So what can be done to ensure that even with the changing times, the individuals are also changing? So I would urge all of us to just pick a role, do the simplest thing you can in your little community, volunteer, sit in these boards, contribute your ideas, be involved in the process. It will actually work.
Thank you, Amani.
She said almost everything, but something I can add is also on the point of creating awareness. You can create awareness also in these big companies. These big companies have the resources, the facilities, and instead of just helping so that they can look good or publicize their name, I think it would be good for each of them to open up a sector where they can give back to the community. I also think on the youth part, a lot of youths have a lot of, and I think they should just be empowered. Whenever we say empower youth, no one ever provides a blueprint on how to do it. I know as we have a talk like this, there's someone who gives us, I want to go do something. But when they approach someone, they don't know what to do, they don't know how to rally their resources, they don't have any support. So if there could be a body in charge of that, or we could just incorporate it into the education system. As they are being taught, you can tell them, this is how you can help your community. And if you want to go further, this is who you should approach. This is how you should do funding. That's actually what we are taught in PACE, how to write a proposal, how to approach this brand. So I think if such can be incorporated into the education system, it would provide a lot of viable opportunities for the youth.
Thank you very much, Amani. I believe CBC at the senior level of secondary will be addressing that, the component of community service learning. We hope that it will be well handled to address that. Sam, very briefly, please.
Thank you. So I believe education as an equalizer should be given more priority. And I also want to appreciate the work the NGOs and partly what the government is doing, because with the Upbed School, we are seeing the transformation with the children. We are seeing that we are achieving the objectives that the national goals of education through their help. So if more people can come on board and not just maybe support a particular group, whether government or private, but just equalize everything and give support to the learners, then we stand a bright future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's have the microphone to Jennifer. The need to equalize all learners, all children of this country. Thank you.
I'm going to quote Malala. One pencil, one child can change the world. It is up to us to ensure that pencil gets to that child. That pencil doesn't have to be an actual pencil. It can be a computer. But it has to get to a child. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Get the microphone to Brian for his parting shot.
I think my parting shot will be around parenting. And I just would make a call to parents to create learning environment at home. I mean, it's okay that we put kids in school and, you know, if I pay the school whatever they need to have, that's fine. But I think we also need to create a culture where some values also are learned at home. When we go deeper into the things that young children go through, even in terms of mental health, there are so many things they're coping with at a very early age, which sometimes is just an issue of ignorance. So mine is just, in my parting shot, is just to urge parents to please take up education even at home seriously, and to know that it's not just learning about this formula, it's also learning about how to cope with people, how to cope with angry moments, just how to cope with disappointment. All those things are things that they can learn at home. And yeah, that's my parting shot.
Thank you very much for being with us for almost 2 hours. Thank you, panelists, for engaging dialogue. And thank you, our participants, for also adding to the voice. And I believe for education to be better in this country, we must all play our part. Collaboration will take us a long way in improving the status of this country. And we owe every child of this country education. Thank you very much and good evening. Ready to go?